Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of Roman concrete, the ancient formula stronger than modern. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. Modern concrete begins to deteriorate within 50 years. Roman concrete, mixed with volcanic ash and seawater by engineers who had no chemistry degrees and no electron microscopes, has been standing in the Mediterranean Sea for 2,000 years, and in many cases is getting stronger. The Pantheon in Rome, built in 125 AD, remains the largest unreinforced concrete dome in the world. The harbor breakwaters at Caesarea Maritima, built by Herod the Great using Roman concrete techniques, sit on the seafloor and show no significant deterioration after 2 millennia of wave action and saltwater exposure. For most of history, the formula for Roman concrete, opus caementicium, was lost. Medieval builders worked with inferior mortars and could not approach the structural achievements of the Romans. The recipe was only recovered through careful scientific analysis of surviving structures, published in a landmark paper in 2017 that revealed the unexpected chemistry behind Rome's most enduring engineering achievement. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the wider world of ancient technological anomalies, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Out-of-place artifacts, objects found in geological or archaeological contexts that predate their supposed invention, represent one of the most contentious categories in all of science. The scientific establishment's response to such discoveries has historically fallen into two camps. The first is skeptical investigation, careful re-examination of the dating, the context, and the object itself, which often reveals a mundane explanation. The second, rarer response is acknowledgement, a formal revision of the assumed timeline in light of evidence that cannot be explained away. Both responses have legitimate roles. The history of archaeology includes many cases where enthusiastic amateur discoveries of supposedly ancient anomalies turned out to be forgeries, misidentified natural formations, or artifacts simply displaced from their original layer by post-depositional disturbance. Critical scrutiny of extraordinary claims is not closed-mindedness. It is scientific responsibility, but it must be applied consistently. The same rigorous scrutiny applied to anomalous claims must also be applied to the mainstream assumptions those claims challenge. And sometimes, when the evidence is examined honestly, the mainstream assumption is the one that breaks. The significance of genuine out-of-place artifacts goes beyond the objects themselves. Each one represents a data point in a larger argument about ancient human capability, about what our ancestors understood, what they could engineer, and how much of that knowledge has been lost. The ancient world was not populated by primitive minds in primitive bodies. The brains that looked up at the night sky 40,000 years ago were neurologically identical to ours. Given sufficient time and motivation, they could have discovered and lost almost anything we know today. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades, and patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter, The core evidence surrounding Roman concrete, the ancient formula stronger than modern, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Roman concrete, used from approximately the 3rd century BC onward, combined volcanic ash, primarily from the Pozzuoli region near Naples, called pozzolana, with lime and seawater to create a cementitious matrix that chemically bonded with aggregate materials including pumice, broken pottery, and rock fragments. The result was structurally superior to modern Portland cement concrete in several key respects. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes, but as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered. Research published in American Mineralogist in 2017 by Marie Jackson and colleagues at the University of California, Berkeley analyzed Roman harbor concrete and found that seawater infiltrating the structures over centuries had reacted with the volcanic ash to form tobermorite crystals, a rare mineral that actually reinforces the concrete matrix rather than degrading it. Modern concrete would crack and spoil under the same conditions. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. The Pantheon's concrete dome spans 43 meters and rises to the same height, creating a perfect SP. Here, poured without reinforcing steel, it has stood for nearly 900 years. Modern engineers who have analyzed its construction find that it uses different concrete mixes at different heights, denser materials at the base, lighter pumice-rich mixes near the top, showing sophisticated understanding of load distribution. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, Roman knowledge of concrete technology was documented in the writings of Vitruvius, whose De Architectura described the optimal ratios of pozzolana to lime and the importance of specific volcanic ash sources. When Rome fell, this technical knowledge was lost not because the texts disappeared, but because the institutional context for applying them did. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of medieval European builders lacking the specific volcanic ash that made Roman concrete chemically self-reinforcing, worked primarily with lime mortars whose strength declined rather than increased over time. This structural inferiority constrained medieval architecture for over a millennium until Portland cement was developed in the 19th century. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: modern Portland cement concrete, while strong in compression, is vulnerable to water infiltration, freeze-thaw cycling, and chemical attack from marine environments. Its typical design lifespan is 50 to 100 years. Roman seawater concrete, by contrast, appears to improve with marine exposure, making it potentially superior for coastal infrastructure applications. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. Equally puzzling to investigators, the specific volcanic ash sources that gave Roman concrete its exceptional properties are limited geographically to certain deposits around the Bay of Naples and similar volcanic regions around the Mediterranean. Modern applications of Roman concrete techniques must source equivalent volcanic materials or identify synthetic substitutes with similar chemistry. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain Roman concrete, the ancient formula stronger than modern. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that Roman concrete superiority resulted entirely from the specific chemistry of Italian volcanic ash, which Roman engineers discovered empirically through centuries of building experience. The engineers did not understand the chemistry, but knew from experience that pozzolana from specific locations produced superior mortar. The knowledge was craft knowledge, not theoretical chemistry. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that Roman concrete's exceptional durability reflects deliberate materials science guided by systematic empirical research. The Romans understood enough about material properties to optimize their formulations, even without modern chemistry. Vitruvius's detailed specifications for materials ratios and mixing procedures demonstrate a level of systematic knowledge that goes beyond purely accidental discovery. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the loss of Roman concrete technology after Rome's fall represents a broader pattern of technical knowledge loss that occurred throughout the medieval period. The recipe was not secret and not destroyed. It was simply no longer practiced because the institutional structures, the legionary engineering corps, the state building programs that had transmitted it ceased to exist. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding Roman concrete, the ancient formula stronger than modern, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence. material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes crystallographic analysis of Roman harbor concrete from Caesarea Maritima and Portus showed tobermorite crystal formation within the pozzolana-lime matrix, a mineral that forms under high temperature and pressure in geology, but forms at ambient temperature in seawater-infiltrated Roman conch. Repair through a process now understood as slow chemical reaction. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented compressive strength testing of ancient Roman concrete samples shows values ranging from 10 to 45 megapascals, depending on application, comparable to modern concrete in compression, but superior in tension, resistance, and fracture behavior due to the crystalline microstructure. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the survival of Roman concrete structures in marine environments for 2 millennia without significant deterioration constitutes direct empirical evidence that the material outperformed RMS modern equivalents in this application, evidence that requires no specialist analysis to evaluate. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding Roman concrete, the ancient formula stronger than modern. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The 2017 discovery of tobermorite crystal formation in Roman concrete has prompted serious interest in engineering applications. Researchers at the University of California, Berkeley, and MIT are developing modern concrete formulations inspired by Roman concrete chemistry, aimed at producing infrastructure with significantly longer service lives and lower carbon footprints. Since pozzolana-based concrete requires less energy to produce than Portland cement. The ancient Romans, in their empirical pursuit of better building materials, may have stumbled onto a sustainable infrastructure solution that modern engineering is only now learning to replicate. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of Roman concrete, the ancient formula stronger than modern, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Roman concrete ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.